Alright, you guys, listen. Before we get into anything today, I need you to sit down, I need you to grab your tea, and I need you to put your phone on Do Not Disturb, because what has happened in the music industry over the last 72 hours is not gossip. It is not stand Twitter noise. It is a full-blown corporate and cultural earthquake, and I have been sitting on this file all morning waiting to walk y'all through it piece by piece. In the span of roughly 3 days, Cardi B reportedly watched a global brand partnership go up in smoke, and not because of anything a magazine printed, but because of one content creator, one phone camera, and one mirror. At the exact same time, Beyonce and Jay-Z, yes, the Carters, the couple we have all been trained to treat like the royal family of American music, surprise dropped a remix that was clearly engineered to send a message to Nicki Minaj. And instead of a coronation, the culture handed them back one of the most embarrassing streaming debuts I have ever seen attached to two names that big. And right in the middle of all of that smoke, Ayra Starr, the one person in this whole file who has done nothing but mind her business and sing, announced her sophomore album. And the way that announcement landed tells you everything about where the power in this industry is actually moving. Now here is what I need y'all to understand before we go any further. None of this is random. None of it is a coincidence. By the end of this video, I am going to show you the thread that ties all three of these stories together, because there is a pattern here, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And stay with me, because the last part of this file is the part nobody else covering this story is talking about, and it changes the entire meaning of everything else. Let's start where the smoke is thickest. So, Cardi B. Now, if you were anywhere near the internet this week, you already know that Old Navy, the same Old Navy your mama dragged you to every August for back-to-school jeans, announced Cardi as their new global brand ambassador with a whole splashy campaign that hit every major fashion publication within the same hour. On paper, this should have been a victory lap. She is one of the most recognizable faces in pop culture. Old Navy has been trying to rebrand younger. On paper, this is a slam dunk. But this is Cardi B we are talking about, and Cardi B does not live on paper. Cardi B lives on Instagram live at 4 in the morning. Cardi B lives in the replies. And Cardi B lives in a receipts folder that her critics have been carefully organizing for the better part of a decade. And this is where it gets crazy, because within the same afternoon that the campaign dropped, Cardi got on video to promote the deal and casually said, and I am paraphrasing here, that when you have a BBL, it is hard to find jeans that fit. Y'all, that sentence traveled around the entire planet before she could even refresh her own page. Because the exact customer Old Navy was trying to court, the everyday woman who wears a size 12, a size 16, a size 20, heard that on camera, and something in her broke. Not because the joke was the worst thing ever said, but because it landed on top of an archive. And that is where Summer Jones enters the chat. Now, if you are new here, let me tell you who Summer Jones is, because her name is going to matter a whole lot more after this week. Summer Jones is the content creator who called Cardi B out last year over a video where Cardi was mocking her own fans' bodies, joking that her bigger supporters were too big to be seen at a Chick-fil-A. It was framed as a joke. Summer did not laugh. Summer made a full sit-down video calling out the fat phobia. And instead of letting it die, Cardi went scorched earth. She stitched Summer's video. She mocked Summer's body in front of tens of millions of people. She basically proved, in real time, every single word Summer had said about her. Fast forward to this week. Old Navy, a brand whose entire marketing spine is built on inclusive sizing, hands Cardi B a global ambassadorship. And Summer Jones, who clearly never forgot, picked up her camera and asked the entire internet one simple question. Why is a company that claims to dress every woman on earth handing its crown to a woman who publicly humiliates women who look exactly like its customers? That was it. One question. No hashtag. No boycott. No screaming. And within 72 hours, the campaign started quietly disappearing. The official channels stopped pushing the assets. Retailers reportedly started asking questions internally. And Cardi, who has never in her life met a microphone she could not set on fire, went live in the middle of the night and told Summer Jones, and I am cleaning this up considerably, to shut up and stop trying to take food out of her children's mouths. She said she becomes a whole different demon about her coins the second anyone threatens the bag. She said she is not apologizing. She said she is not reading anybody's book. She said she is not getting on her knees for a fake apology. And then she said the part that made even her own defenders wince. She said if you push her and push her and push her, eventually she will bite. Now listen, I have loved Cardi B's music. I have defended that woman in rooms where defending her was not popular. But we have to be honest about what we all just watched. Cardi B went on live, with the ring light on, in her own voice, and confirmed every single character allegation her critics have been making for 3 years straight. That is not a smear campaign. That is not a media conspiracy. That is a self-portrait. And a self-portrait is the one thing a publicist cannot walk back. And the internet noticed, because for every person defending Cardi this week, another creator picked up their phone and pointed at the obvious. The exact behavior the culture loves to hang around Nicki Minaj's neck, the bullying, the punching down, the refusal to ever apologize, the fan base that gets mobilized to run critics off the internet. Cardi B has now put that behavior on camera 3 separate times in 1 calendar year. There was a viral TikTok that laid it out side by side, and I am just going to walk you through the comparisons, because they are uncomfortable. When Nicki Minaj defended her husband, the industry press treated her like she had personally committed the crime. When Cardi defended her ex in an eerily similar situation this year, the same press framed it like a heartwarming ride-or-die love story. When Nicki cracked a joke about a rival's child, the culture chewed her up for 3 weeks straight. When Cardi made a joke years ago about a deceased infant, the culture laughed, moved on, and put her on more magazine covers. The double standard is not subtle anymore. It is a searchlight, and Summer Jones just switched it on. Now here is the part that I really need the business-minded people in my comments to sit with, because this is the part that tells you how big this actually is. Brands are not moral institutions. Brands are risk management institutions. When a company the size of Old Navy onboards a global ambassador, they run what is basically a reputational risk audit. Every past controversy gets cataloged. Every viral outburst gets timestamped. Every fanbase behavior gets monitored. If the audit comes back clean, the deal moves forward. If the audit flashes red, the deal quietly vanishes from the marketing calendar. And nothing about how fast this campaign evaporated suggests anybody got surprised. What it suggests is that the executive team greenlit the deal, bet that the risk was contained, and then watched Summer Jones publicly weaponize the exact receipts that audit had already flagged. So they pulled the plug before the 4th quarter. That is not cancel culture. That is a Fortune 500 risk committee doing math. And that is what makes the Summer Jones moment so surgical. She did not organize anything. She did not demand anything. She pointed at the receipts one more time and let the accountants do the rest. And y'all, once a brand learns that one creator with a phone and a mirror can move your stock price adjacencies, every other brand watching takes notes. That is why this story is not about one deal. This story is about every deal, which is exactly why Cardi's next move made everything so much worse. But hold that thought for 1 second, because I want to know something before we keep going. If you are watching this and you have ever been a Cardi B supporter, I want you to drop one word in the comments. Just one. Was the Old Navy exit Summer Jones's fault, or was it the receipts finally catching up? I am reading every single answer. Okay, so while Cardi B was out here doing demolition work on her own house in real time, another power couple was learning a very painful lesson about underestimating Nicki Minaj. Beyonce and Jay-Z. The Carters. Now, according to the whispers coming out of the industry this week, and I want to be careful to say these are whispers, the theory behind their surprise move was simple. Nicki has not run a proper album cycle in a while. Nicki has been posting cryptically. Nicki has been picking her spots. So the play, allegedly, was to drop a surprise Carter collaboration, flood every streaming platform on the planet, and let the numbers bury Nicki Minaj under a tidal wave of streams. Loves. That is not what happened. The Morning Remix, featuring Beyonce and Jay-Z on the same track back-to-back for the first time in what feels like a decade, failed to debut on the global Apple Music Top 200. Failed to debut on the United States Apple Music Top 200. Failed to crack even 300,000 streams on Spotify in its opening frame. And here is the detail that keeps me up at night. The original version of the record actually dropped on the charts after the remix came out, as if the extra star power somehow poisoned the well instead of watering it. The Carters put out a surprise release in 2026, and the culture's response was the sound of one crow calling into an empty forest. Let me put that number in perspective. because I do not want anybody scrolling past the size of what just happened. 300,000 streams is a number a mid-tier rising artist can pull on a random Tuesday. 300,000 streams is a debut that would embarrass an unsigned SoundCloud rapper. For a Beyonce and Jay-Z surprise release, in an era where they own every marketing lever imaginable, that is not a soft opening. That is a public collapse. And the fact that the publicity machine is spinning it as artful restraint is honestly one of the boldest gaslighting attempts I have ever watched a PR team run. Now, the Beyhive is doing what the Beyhive always does when a Beyonce project underperforms. Surprise releases are impossible to promote. Morning was never meant to be a streaming song. It was a mood piece. Jay-Z has not needed a chart run since his 20s. And listen, some of that is fair. But here is the thing the Beyhive cannot spin. The entire point of a surprise release is to convert shock into massive first-week numbers. Beyonce invented the modern version of that format. When the self-titled album dropped, the internet melted. When Lemonade dropped, the culture shifted overnight. Surprise releases are supposed to gag the room. That is the whole design. The Morning remix did not gag the room. The Morning remix got politely acknowledged and quietly ignored by an audience that has increasingly decided the Carter mythology has been running on fumes since roughly 2019. And Jay-Z, of course, cannot stop poking the sleeping tiger. If you rewind the tape a few months, you will find him on stage at Roots Picnic making pointed little jabs at Nicki Minaj, mocking her stumbles, referencing her family, behaving like a man who has forgotten that Nicki Minaj is a woman who plays the long game. Nicki did not respond that night. Nicki did not respond the next week. Nicki did not respond the next month. Nicki posted a single sentence to her story, something along the lines of, "Imagine being a grown man worried about her in the year 2026, and then she went completely dark." And y'all, that silence is not weakness. That silence is a woman letting her opposition do her math for her. Because the moment Jay-Z stood on that stage and mocked her son, a 5-year-old child, and Nicki still refused to answer, every single person watching this rivalry understood the same thing at the same time. She is not on Jay-Z's clock. She is on her own clock. And when she finally swings back, she is not going to swing at a freestyle. She is going to swing at the entire foundation the Carters have been standing on for 20 years. And that brings us to the whisper that has been rippling through the industry all week. And I need y'all to hold this thread because it is going to matter 3 months from now. People close to the situation are saying that Nicki Minaj has, quote, locked down information. Dates, names, receipts, corroborating witnesses, material that could, if it ever saw daylight, permanently reshape how the public views the Beyonce and Jay-Z marriage. Alleged affairs, alleged arrangements, alleged decisions made by Mama Tina back when Beyonce was still a young woman being coached into the biggest strategic partnership in music history. Now, I am not going to sit here and repeat every rumor, because some of those rumors deserve verification before they ever touch a script. But I will point out that the marriage, according to multiple independent reports from outlets that do this for a living, has reportedly been in serious trouble for over a year. Beyonce is reportedly exhausted. Beyonce is reportedly done covering. And Beyonce is reportedly ready to let the truth do whatever the truth decides to do. And there is one thread inside those whispers that matters more than all the others. Multiple insiders have suggested that the reason Beyonce stayed as long as she did was not romantic. It was structural. Her brand was built in part on the fantasy of an unshakable love story. That fantasy has been monetized on tour after tour, documentary after documentary, magazine spread after magazine spread. To dismantle it publicly is to dismantle a piece of her own commercial architecture, which means the exit, if it comes, will not look like a divorce. It will look like a slow, negotiated unwind. And the culture will be watching every quarterly filing. Meanwhile, Jay-Z, who apparently forgot he has his own legal storm cloud following him from continent to continent, chose this exact moment to try to publicly humiliate the one woman in hip-hop history who has more receipts on the industry than anyone alive. Sweetie, that is not strategy. That is a man who has been surrounded by yes people for so long that he no longer remembers what a real fight sounds like. And this is where the pattern I promised you at the top finally locks into place. Cardi B is losing a global brand deal because a woman she bullied last year finally spoke into a camera. Beyonce and Jay-Z just watched a surprise release flop in public Because the audience has run out of patience for a couple that keeps swinging at Nicki Minaj. And Nicki Minaj, the woman allegedly being sabotaged by all of them, is somewhere with her phone off, doing absolutely nothing except living her life and letting the other side hand her the war on a silver tray. That is what winning looks like when you stop reacting. That is what winning looks like when you stop begging the culture to validate you. That is what winning looks like when you understand that time is the only receipt that matters. Now let me pivot, because I refuse to spend this entire video in the trenches, and there is genuine sunshine in this file. Ayra Starr, the Nigerian-born vocal powerhouse who has been quietly building one of the most exciting Afrobeats catalogs of her generation, just confirmed that her sophomore album, Starr Girl, drops on the 14th of August, 2026, and the tracklist is stacked in a way that should have the entire industry paying attention. There is a Lianne La Havas collaboration on this album, which is exactly the kind of cross-genre bridge move that separates artists who chase trends from artists who build legacies. There is a Zayn feature, which is a genuinely inspired pairing. Ayra's warm alto sitting on top of Zayn's airy falsetto is the kind of texture A&Rs dream about. There is a Starr Girl remix with Rema that is already out and already climbing. There is a Hustlers Anthem remix on the way. And on top of all of that, she has solo singles already generating real buzz. Tornado is out. Give Me That with Wizkid is out. And those are just the appetizers. Let me talk about Tornado for a second, because that record deserves its flowers. From the moment the pre-chorus lifts, Ayra Starr is telling you exactly who she is. A woman who has decided her second album will not be a repeat of her first. The production leans harder into live instrumentation. The vocal takes are longer, more textured, more confident. There are moments on that record where you can hear her deliberately holding a note past the length her earlier work would have allowed, and every one of those moments is a signal that a real vocalist has arrived. If Starr Girl delivers even 70% of what Tornado is promising, we are looking at an Afrobeats project that is going to run the entire fourth quarter of 2026. Now, I have to be honest with the Ayra Starr fanbase about something, because there is a segment of the internet, and you know exactly who I am talking about, that has been trolling this rollout since the moment it was announced. The talking point they keep recycling is that a certain other African diaspora artist sold 20,000 copies in her first week, so therefore Ayra is doomed to underperform. Angels, that is not analysis. That is fandom cope. Because the reality right now, in the year 2026, is that the loudest female voice in Afrobeats, measured by actual chart performance, actual streaming volume, actual radio penetration, is Tems. Tems is sitting on the Hot 100 with 2 records at the same time. Tems is charting. Tems is winning. And Ayra Starr, positioned correctly, has every conceivable opportunity to become the number 2 flag bearer of a movement that is only accelerating. And I want to be extra careful here, because I have watched too many gossip channels turn a nuanced Afrobeats conversation into a cheap Tyla versus Tems versus Ayra slap fight. That is lazy commentary, and I refuse to do it. Tyla makes a specific hybrid pop AMA piano sound that she has been very clear does not even need the Afrobeats label, and her success in her own lane has been remarkable. Tems is charting because her artistry finally got matched with a rollout worthy of it. And Ayra Starr is in a category of her own, a younger, more vocally elastic performer who has been quietly outworking nearly every peer in her age bracket. All 3 can win. All 3 should win. But if the specific question is who is carrying the Afrobeats flag on the Hot 100 right now, the honest answer is Tems, and the fair second position belongs to whoever puts in the work. Now, I have my own reservations about Roc Nation as a management structure, and I have said what I said about that. But my reservations about a label do not translate into skepticism about Ayra Starr. I have been listening to her since long before she signed anything, and I will still be listening the day she outgrows it. What I am asking of the fanbase is very simple. Do not be one of those people who screams online about how much you support an artist and then never buys a single copy of the album. Stream the record. Buy the record. Show up on release week. Ayra Starr deserves that. Afrobeats deserves that. And frankly, this culture deserves an artist who does not spend her promotional run insulting her own supporters. Cough. No names. Cough. And one more thing about why this Starr Girl rollout matters beyond the music. For years, Afrobeats was treated by the American industry like a guest at somebody else's party invited for the summer, ignored by November. What artists like Ayra, Starr, Thames, Rema, and Wizkid have been building is the exact opposite of that arrangement. They are not crossing over. They are making the center of gravity move. A sophomore album with this kind of feature list, on this kind of timeline, is a statement that the genre is no longer asking anybody's permission to sit at the main table. Remember that framing when the first week numbers land, because the same outlets that spent this week pretending the morning remix was a mood piece are going to turn around and pretend they always believed in Stargirl. They did not. You heard it here first. Now, let me talk very briefly about Iggy Azalea, because loyal viewers of this channel already know how I feel about her. Iggy Azalea has a new project in the pipeline. I do not have a hard release date yet, but the visuals she has been teasing on her socials suggest that whatever she is building is significantly more ambitious than her recent output. Give the woman her flowers. Iggy Azalea has weathered more industry cancellations, more public pile-ons, and more attempted career burials than most of her peers combined, and she is still standing on business. That is respectable. Whether the music connects is a separate conversation, but the resilience is real, and I am not one of those commentators who is going to pretend Iggy Azalea does not exist just because it is fashionable. Every time Iggy Azalea drops a rollout, 3 trend cycles later, I watch other rappers borrow the aesthetic she pioneered. Give her the credit, give her the shot, and let the numbers, not the discourse, decide. So, let's come back to the center of the storm, because I want to make sure the main thread lands the right way. The reason the Old Navy situation matters is not that one influencer got mad on the internet. Influencers get mad on the internet every hour of every day. The reason it matters is that it revealed something the industry has been trying to hide for a long time. A certain rapper's brand equity is nowhere near as bulletproof as her PR team has been pretending. If you look at the last 24 months of Cardi B's career, what you see is a woman who is loud, who is present, who is trending, and whose music has quietly stopped moving units at the level her cultural footprint would suggest. Am I the drama underperformed relative to expectations? The singles run has been inconsistent. The chart battles with her contemporaries have not gone the way her fanbase promised us they would. And now Old Navy, a mainstream American brand with everything to lose, apparently decided that the reputational risk of keeping Cardi B outweighed the marketing upside. That is a 5-alarm siren for anybody paying attention to her trajectory. And instead of taking the professional route, which would have been silence, a drafted statement, and a quiet rebuild, Cardi went live again after the news started leaking and chose escalation. She mocked her critics. She insulted her critics' appearances. She made comments about her critics' bodies that will absolutely resurface the next time she sits across from a brand's legal team. Cardi B is doing the demolition work on her own house, while the whole media watches. And I need to be very clear about my tone here, because I do not hate Cardi B. I never have. But there is a difference between defending an artist's music and pretending an artist's behavior has no professional consequences. She is proving, in real time, on a public timeline, that she cannot separate her business from her personal grievances. And that is a career-limiting condition that no amount of she's just being real excuses can wallpaper over anymore. Zoom back out with me, because this is the industry pattern that keeps repeating. An artist confuses being controversial with being culturally important. They spend every waking hour feeding the outrage engine. And then one morning they wake up and discover that the algorithm gave them noise, but the accountant stopped writing checks. It happened to a whole generation of reality television celebrities before her, and the mechanism is exactly the same. The difference is that a music career is supposed to be recession-proof. If the songs are moving, the brand deals are secondary. But when the songs are not moving and the brand deals are drying up in the same quarter, that is not a bad news cycle. That is a business fundamentals problem. And business fundamentals problems do not fix themselves at 3 in the morning on live. And just so we are clear about what the professional route actually looks like, because I already know some of y'all are typing that she had no choice but to respond. There is an entire crisis playbook for moments exactly like this. Step 1, say nothing publicly. Step 2, let the legal team draft a statement that acknowledges without confessing. Step 3, let one friendly outlet run one soft profile, and then let 2 weeks of silence do all the heavy lifting. That playbook has saved careers 10 times messier than this one. But it requires the one thing Cardi B has never been willing to give any situation, and that is her silence. Every brand executive watching this unfold learned the same lesson at the same time. The risk was never the controversy. The risk is that the controversy is voluntary. She chooses it. On camera. With the ring light on. Every single time. And there is not a risk committee on this earth that can insure against a client who insists on testifying against herself in front of millions of people. And meanwhile, and I keep coming back to this because it deserves to be said out loud, Nicki Minaj is doing nothing. She is not on live. She is not on Twitter. She is not in the group chat. She is watching from wherever she is while the people who spent the last 5 years dismissing her, mocking her, and trying to sabotage her slowly walk themselves into their own graves. And when Nicki Minaj finally does move, and she will, that is a when, not an if. She is not going to move loud. She is going to move surgical. Because the woman has been in this industry for 20 years, and the only reason she is still standing is that she has always understood one thing that the Carters and her longtime rival apparently have not. You do not have to be the loudest. You just have to be the last one standing. Think about the historical pattern. When JT and Ice Spice tried to distance themselves from Nicki, the culture treated it like a coronation of the newcomers. Nicki said very little, waited, and by the time the dust settled, the same media that celebrated the distance was pretending it never happened. When the industry tried to prop up alternative rivals during the Pink Friday 2 era, Nicki did not spend her promo cycle attacking them. She spent it charting. And when the internet decided a certain freestyle from a certain Carter had finally ended her, Nicki answered eventually. On a Tuesday, on an unrelated Instagram Live, wearing a wig nobody predicted, and dropped a single sentence that reframed the entire narrative in her favor. That is what she does. That is what she has always done. And the culture, for all its short memory, remembers exactly one thing at a time. Whoever swings last usually swings hardest. Now let me give y'all a few curveball predictions, because this news cycle is not done, and I want you positioned before it moves again. Watch for a legacy artist, not one anybody has been paying attention to lately, to insert themselves into this Beyonce and Jay-Z conversation in a way that catches everyone off guard. Watch for at least one influencer who has nothing to do with Summer Jones to publicly announce they are stepping back from a Cardi B collaboration they had already accepted. Watch for a Roc Nation restructuring rumor to leak in the second half of the month, because when a label's flagship marriage looks unstable, the corporate side always starts leaking. And keep an eye on the Ayra Starr documentary rumor that has been floating around for 2 weeks, because if that lands anywhere near the Starr Girl release week, the entire narrative around her rollout changes overnight. Screenshot this part. Come back and check me. And now I am talking directly to the fandoms, so if this is you, lean in. Party gang, before you flood my comments, I want you to answer one question honestly. If a fan you humiliated a year ago is the reason a global brand walked away from your ambassador deal this month, is that the fan's fault, or is that the receipt catching up? I am not asking rhetorically. I genuinely want to see how the fan base reconciles what happened to Summer Jones with what your favorite is telling herself right now. Bayhive, before you slide into the replies, sit with this one too. If a surprise release from 2 of the biggest names in music history cannot break 300,000 streams on debut day in 2026, is that Nicki Minaj's fault? Or is it a sign the audience quietly moved on from a formula that used to be untouchable? Be honest. Nobody grows if we lie to ourselves about the numbers. And be honest about this too. Is Beyonce being served by her current PR strategy, or is she being buried by it? Barbs, I know you have been patient. I know you have been quiet in a way this fandom is not usually quiet. Keep doing exactly what you are doing. Stream in silence. Buy in silence. Show up in silence. Because the moment your favorite decides to open her mouth, you are going to want every receipt already loaded and every stat already in your pocket. The war is coming. It is just not coming on their timeline. It is coming on hers. And when Nicki Minaj finally does address this, whether it is a freestyle, a story post, an unexpected feature verse, or a full album cycle, the internet is going to have exactly 1 weekend to catch up. And I want every single one of you already stat ready. Ayra Starr fans, I see you pre-saving. I see you planning listening parties. I see you fighting Tyla fans in the replies. Rein it in 1 degree. Because if you spend the next 8 days feuding online instead of streaming, you are going to hand your critics the exact ammunition they need. Support the music. Show up on release day. Buy the deluxe when it drops. That is how you build an Afrobeats era that outlives the news cycle. And to the Thames fans watching, I see you too. Keep her charting. Keep her winning. There is space at the top for more than one African woman, and gatekeeping each other does the industry a favor it has not earned. And to everybody watching, whichever fandom you belong to, remember one thing before I close this file. The internet is loud, but the algorithm is quiet. The algorithm sees who is winning long before the timeline admits it. And right now the algorithm is telling me that one major rapper is bleeding, the Carters are wobbling, a Starr is climbing, and Nicki Minaj is somewhere off camera, patient as a chess player, waiting for the moment when one move ends multiple games at once. And I want to leave you with a bigger thought about what this week is actually documenting. We are watching, in slow motion, the collapse of an entire era of celebrity architecture. For 15 years, the American pop machine was built on a very specific arrangement. A small number of extremely famous women were kept in constant public conflict, and the rest of us were expected to pick a team and stay loyal. That arrangement made money. It made a lot of money, but it made the participants brittle. It made the audience exhausted, and it made the next generation of artists suspicious of the entire framework. What we are seeing right now, the Old Navy exit, the morning remix flop, the calculated silence from Nicki Minaj, the rise of Ayra, Starr, and Thames on their own terms, that is what it looks like when a paradigm quietly ends. The next paradigm gets built by artists who do the work, keep their receipts, and refuse to trade their long-term catalog value for one viral moment. Remember who told you that. Remember where you heard it first. So, I told you at the top of this video that none of this was a coincidence, and I promised you a pattern. Here it is, one more time, clean. Cardi B performed chaos on the internet for years, and this week the bill arrived. Beyonce and Jay-Z tried to turn their mythology into a weapon, and this week the mythology missed. Ayra Starr kept her head down and cooked in silence, and this week the industry handed her the microphone. And Nicki Minaj did nothing at all, and somehow won every single round. The artists who spent their days performing chaos are watching their careers leak out of the building, and the artists who kept cooking are being handed the keys whether the industry likes it or not. That is the pattern. That was always the pattern. Now, if you made it this far, I love you and I appreciate you, and I want to hear from you. Drop your verdict in the comments. Was Cardi B right to go live and defend herself, or did she just seal her own coffin? Was the morning remix a legitimate flop, or is the Bayhive right that surprise releases are not built for chart performance? And who wins the second half of 2026? Nicki Minaj, Thames, Ayra Starr, or a name none of us are watching closely enough yet? I am reading every single comment, and I promise the response video is going to be even messier than this one. Do me a small favor before you click away. Hit that like button. It costs you nothing, and it tells the algorithm to keep pushing this channel into rooms where the truth is being avoided. Subscribe if you have not already, and turn on notifications, because when Nicki Minaj finally swings back, you do not want to hear about it from anybody else. And if this video helped you see the pattern more clearly, share it with the friend in your group chat who is still defending their favorite. They need to see this one twice. Send it to the cousin who swears the Carters are untouchable. They need to see it 3 times. Send it to the co-worker who thinks Afrobeats is a fad. They need it on repeat until the Starr Girl first week numbers arrive to embarrass their whole timeline. Until next time, loves. Stay honest. Stay skeptical. Stay ready. Because in this industry, the story is never over. The story is just waiting for the next receipt to arrive. And I promise you, one is already on the way. See you in the next file. Bring your notepad. Bring your patience. Bring your favorite mug. Because if the last 72 hours were any indication,